The boy looked at the tombstone engraved with his name, recalling the scene from a few years ago when he came back to life from a coffin. That day was known as the Resurrection Day by humans, a day when the dead buried underground suddenly came back to life, turning into mindless, bloodthirsty zombies that roamed the streets and took countless human lives. However, the authorities later discovered that these zombies were not entirely incurable, and they developed a special drug to treat them. With the treatment, although the zombies still looked pale and had eerie pupils, they were able to regain their rationality and memories from when they were alive, no longer exhibiting violent behavior. In fact, some stable cases were even allowed to return to the human world and reunite with their families. From that day on, zombies were no longer called zombies. They were given a more respectable name: partially deceased syndrome patients, or simply PDS sufferers. The young boy, Kieran, was one of them. Before the outbreak, Kieran was an 18-year-old who died in an accident. After experiencing life as a zombie and then being cured, he was finally given a chance to live again as a PDS sufferer. By applying foundation to cover his pale skin and wearing special contact lenses to conceal his eerie pupils, Kieran could almost pass as a normal human. When his parents saw their son who had died and come back to life, they were overwhelmed with joy. He looked far better than they had expected. However, reintegrating into society as a PDS sufferer was far from easy, especially in Kieran's hometown, where people were known for their tough and traditional views. Although 2 years had passed since the outbreak was brought under control, the local civilian volunteer force still patrolled the area every night, ready to kill any zombies they encountered. Despite the government's efforts to change public opinion, the townspeople still firmly opposed the return of any PDS sufferers. On their way home, Kieran's parents immediately hid him in the back seat whenever they saw someone approaching, carefully sneaking him into their house. Not long after, a PDS care worker knocked on their door. She explained some precautions to Kieran's family and then pulled down Kieran's shirt collar, revealing a black puncture wound at the back of his neck. She injected a daily dose of medication into it, which was necessary to suppress the virus from relapsing. However, the medication came with a side effect. It occasionally triggered Kieran's memories from when he was a zombie. For safety reasons, Kieran was strictly instructed to stay indoors and not to go out. PDS sufferers did not require food, but to comfort his parents, Kieran still sat at the dinner table pretending to eat using a knife and fork. Coincidentally, Kieran's sister, Jem, was a member of the volunteer force. She had personally killed many zombies during the outbreak and was visibly disturbed to see her zombified brother back home.
I'm not coming in until that disappears.
Kieran, without saying a word, quietly returned to his room without any complaints. Deep down, Jem knew that this was still her brother, not some evil creature. That night, hearing Kieran reminiscing about their childhood through the walls, Jem was finally moved and started to slowly accept her resurrected brother. But peace didn't last long. One night, Jem suddenly heard through a radio that the volunteer force was heading to their area to eliminate a PDS sufferer. Her first thought was that Kieran's identity had been exposed. The whole family immediately armed themselves and prepared for a confrontation with the volunteer force. However, at the last moment they realized that the target was actually the house next door.